Rhett Palmer.
The mayor of the airwaves is ready to go. Talking to people you want to know.
Face to face.
One-on-one. Get the story and have some fun
With Rhett Palmer.
And now, the most trusted name in radio, Rhett Palmer, the mayor of the airwaves.
Nothing like starting off the day with some fake applause. You get a kick out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Don Bell is in here. Don Bell is retired from the Secret Service, and now he lives in a clandestine location we can't tell you about. Right?
Oh, yeah. Really?
And so we got a lot to discuss. He was a liaison with the FBI and with the Congress, and also had 60 Minutes actually come and visit his house. Were you in trouble with 60 Minutes?
Well, this is one of those situations that, most people believe that the Secret Service is involved with only protecting the President of the United States, former presidents, first ladies, foreign heads of state, and major presidential candidates, and so forth. In other words, protection. But that's basically about half of the duties of a Secret Service agent. We are responsible for investigating most U.S. Treasury Department violations, like the counterfeiting of the currency, and any security and forging and cashing of the securities and obligations of the United States government, any obligation or security obligation issued by the U.S. Treasury Department. And as we previously discussed, the Secret Service was formed on April 14th, 1865, to investigate the counterfeiting of our U.S. currency. That was the only criminal violation mentioned in the Constitution, is counterfeiting. It became such a problem, and so therefore,
an easy way to get rich.
Yeah, these engravers back then, these engravers who made the counterfeit bills and so forth, they used the real engraving, like steel or metal engraving. And they were experts.
Yeah,
so
it's
anyway,
amazing what a good.
It is.
What a good.
So that's basically, we investigated those type violations and practically most federal violations until after the FBI was formed. FBI was formed in 1908, and 8 Secret Service agents went over and formed the FBI in 1908. And as I mentioned maybe previously, before J. Edgar Hoover became director of the FBI.
Well, who started? Which president started this? Was it started by a president?
That was when it was 1908. I think Teddy Roosevelt was president at the time.
So he had this started.
Right. Yeah.
Turns out he was a pretty good president, wasn't he?
Oh, he was very good. He was active.
We wouldn't have Pelican Island up here that's a preserve if it hadn't been for Teddy Roosevelt. He was a man's man, right?
That's right, and
we wouldn't have the teddy bear.
That's right, and he went down and was responsible for the Panama Canal being built, and he traveled as a Secretary of the Navy, I believe. He traveled all over the area, and he traveled to. He liked to be in war. In battle. Okay, and he was extremely active in that.
So
area.
if he couldn't find a person to chase down, he'd find a fox to chase down, right?
You're right. He was an unbelievable individual, and there in the White House, he liked to box, and he would like to spar with these heavyweight champions. So he was sparring with one of the heavyweight champions back during that period of time, and the champion accidentally hit him in the eye, and it blinded him in one eye. And
forever?
Yeah, and that's the reason he wore those spectacles,
Oh, no.
Yeah, he
His testosterone finally got him in trouble.
It was unbelievable. But anyway, and then another criminal investigation that we covered and investigated was food stamp fraud.
Food stamp fraud. Yeah, and that's much easier.
Well,
not today, though. Now they have credit cards.
That's right. back when I was when I was still working as a street agent and so forth, I had this investigation there in Memphis, Memphis, Tennessee. No, Louisville. I'm sorry. This was Louisville. Okay. My first field office with the Secret Service was in Memphis. Then I was transferred from Memphis to our headquarters in Washington. And then after I'd been up there and I was ready to leave D.C., I chose to be relocated in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I had this food stamp fraud
Now,
investigation.
hold on. Now, as I recall, everybody wants to put down Richard Nixon, and he was a character, and he was paranoid about the press, rightfully so, wrongfully so. I don't know who hit first, but he was the guy who initiated the food stamps. Now, that's because I guess his family had actually gone hungry at one time.
And he also created the Environmental Protection Agency, and he was a.
But he also
he
took
did.
away the gold thing with the Federal Reserve,
Right.
and really screwed up our country.
Now that goes back to FDR when he took the country off the gold standard and.
I thought that was Nixon.
No, that was FDR in 1930.
I'm glad to find out that it was a Democrat.
34.
I'm glad to find out it was a Democrat.
And that created havoc.
I got to tell you something, though. I will tell you about Democrats. FDR, who I lived near, my mother used to buy our Christmas tree from Mrs. Roosevelt. We were in Poughkeepsie, New York. My grandmother lived in Hyde Park, and of course, you know who lived in Hyde Park. FDR, his wife, and everything.
Really?
But so FDR comes along, and I don't know. Are you conservative? I tend to be conservative. So in other words, well, I'll just say this: if it came along today and there was not Social Security, I'd be the first to say, socialization, communism, blah blah blah. I have to tell you something. FDR is a hero for me. Thank God for Social Security.
Right.
Thank God. Do you know how many people out there today, what this country would look like? You think we got a homeless problem now? Without Social Security, what would happen? Now, I don't like the fact that they raped and pillaged that, but anyway, I'm just trying to I want people to know, because everybody considers me a Republican conservative, and I have been, and I guess I am still, to the most part, but FDR, okay. Then we had the next president that was Democrat, of course, was JFK.
Well,
I don't know.
Truman.
Okay. But I'm saying for my influence.
Yeah,
so
right.
FDR turns out in my life to be a great blessing. And then when Clinton was in office, everybody's screaming about Clinton. And me too. I never voted for the guy. But he made me a rich man. I'm not going to go into details.
Right.
But because you could buy properties with no documentation.
Right.
Because he wanted everybody to have a home. And
Right,
they didn't know
right,
there was
right.
going to be another side to that and a downside side to it. And then, of course, it caused havoc later on. And then we had Obama. Now, Obama, remember, he what did he do? He something with the banks. And something had happened with the banks going out and anything. Oh, he loaned a bunch of money to the banks. Well, because he loaned that money to the banks had to repay back the government or the people. And I won't go into details, but I was one of the recipients of that inadvertently. In other words, it wouldn't have happened if he was. So I really should be voting Democrat, because every time a Democrat's in office, I end up making more money.
Well, now,
is that funny?
FDR made many great decisions. He felt
did.
like he felt like he had to. When President Hoover was in there, he was an economist, and he was in President Harding's cabinet as an economist. I think maybe equivalent to Secretary of Commerce or whatever. But he was responsible for the Hoover Dam, and he did a lot
I
of
was
things.
just out there recently.
Yeah.
Got to see
And,
it. Wow! Is that?
so
have
he-
you been out there?
Oh yes, I've
Man,
seen
is
it.
that
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
Monolithic, right?
But but he was methodical, and he came from he thought like an economist. He wanted to do things the right way, whatever. But what happened? It was too slow due to the economic crisis in our country, due to the Depression. His methods I'm sure, would have worked in the long run, but it was a situation where the people really couldn't wait, politically especially, and So FDR, he made a lot of great decisions, and
Yeah.
and
Look at the work program.
and President
They put
Clinton,
America back to
yeah,
work and built
right.
these roads.
And President Clinton did also until he changed horses in midstream, okay, and
In what way?
well, he when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, they and so forth, they control the House of Representatives, and so he turned more conservative. In other words, if you recall, he became in other words, he started thinking like Republicans, really, and that was the correct decision at the time, and he turned the economy around.
Clinton.
He was smart enough to know
Clinton
when
is
to,
one smart
He is,
human
yeah,
being.
right.
I mean,
So-
they say if you meet him, you can be a staunch conservative. But you sit there with him, within 5 minutes, he's won you over. I got into a cab in Copenhagen, and he had just exited, they said.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'm sitting in the same seat. But you know why they go there? Why all these famous people go there?
No, I don't
In
know.
Copenhagen. Have you been to Copenhagen?
No, I have
Okay.
not.
They don't disturb the famous walking down the street. They do not accost the famous or the rich or those are noble, whatever. So they're free. I mean, and that's a great thing to someone who's, recognized.
Right.
I can't imagine. When I was younger, I wanted to be famous nationally, and I've had a little bit of fame in this little town,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Oh,
known
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But even here, I have to be in total service, hopefully, of others. First of all, I can't get mad in public, or I'm the bad guy.
Oh,
You know what? And they'll tell hundreds of people, what a bad guy. I had a bad, I get to have a bad day too. Anyway, but I'm at the mall and people stop. And it's my honor to stop and talk to them. A lot of my friends or my spouse,
Right.
nobody wants to be with me when I go to the mall because people stop. And I've got to stop because
Well, sure.
because I need to honor that person. Now, they may talk for a few minutes and they start to talk about their lawnmower or something. And then I say, well, I got to get going here. But, but anyway, so I can't imagine. Can you imagine what it's like in this day and age? And particularly now that everybody wants to pick on you.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
It's like Harry, that Downey guy that got addicted to drugs. Remember he was a famous star. Then they start punching at you because you're famous. Then he starts to use drugs, comes back, uses drugs, almost dies from drug overdose, comes back finally. Now, the people know that he has been humbled, and we know that he knows he's no better than us. By the way, he broke down with his car here a couple of years ago.
Really?
And told nationally,
You're
I've
talking
driven to
about-
this little
are you
town
talking about
called
Robert Downey Jr.? Is
yeah,
that who you're
and he
talking about?
said that the people, somebody here treated him so nice and never recognized who he was.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is, we the people know that he has been humbled. He reached a bottom, and we know that he knows forever that he's no better than us.
Right.
Because very uncomfortable to be with somebody who thinks they're better.
Oh my goodness.
Like these,
yeah.
there are certain people on this
Really?
beach here that have inherited gluts of money, and they actually think they're better, when in fact, as a 70-year-old man, they have inferior lives often, the ones who inherit it. The ones who earn it, I'm not saying, because they go through the process of gaining wisdom in order and humility, hopefully. Whereas the people that are just handed this thing, it's really robbing them. Remember Bob Dylan said, "Help me, I'm helpless like a rich man's son." Because when you give somebody, okay, let's say right now, I want to have a helicopter one day. I want to earn it. Well, I've got to I want to get my art selling so much that I can buy $1 million helicopter. But all of a sudden you say, "Hey, Rhett, I didn't tell you, but I'm a billionaire and I like you and you've had me on your show and I'm going to buy you that helicopter." Oh, wow, that's great. But is it as sweet as if I'd earned it?
That's right.
Now, if there's a reason, if I can use that for going and feeding the hungry, that's another thing. If I can use that to help the poor or the indigent or whoever I want to help, that's a good thing. Then that becomes a tool. You've given me a tool. That's a whole different thing. But if it's just mine to use and I haven't earned it, it's not as sweet. It's kind of like when you eat pistachios. You like pistachios?
Yes.
Okay.
I like
So
it.
when you get the pistachios and you have to work at it to open it up, it tastes really good when you earn that pistachio. Do you ever get the pistachios that are they're out of the shell?
Yes.
They're not that good.
No.
The whole fun of it is you have to earn it. You know.
No, really. But anyway, you're correct. I was getting back to this investigating the food stamp case there in Louisville.
Yeah.
Which got the attention of 60 Minutes.
I like,
CBS
you're a
60
good
Minutes
manager. You brought us around that whole loop, down in that rabbit hole, and you pulled us up.
Yeah.
You were a good boss. I bet
mean,
you were a boss.
I mean, I was during that period of time. We there in the Louisville field office. I think we had 6 agents to cover the whole state.
Wow.
And it was one of those situations where you looked around, and man, I did not want to get involved in that particular investigation.
Why?
Because I knew what was involved.
Well, and that wasn't on a bill, a dollar bill. We have intricate little writings,
Yeah.
but on food stamps back then they were very simply done and
Yeah,
easy to imitate, right?
But they're printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, just like the money.
Yeah.
And they are classified as a security and obligation of the United States government. They're classified.
So when you're
as
making
being,
those,
as
it's a
being
federal
money,
crime.
as being money. They're used as another form of currency. And what was happening there in Louisville, the company that had the contract from the state to issue all the over-the-counter food stamps, they were stealing food stamps from the system. and
who was stealing them?
The company that had the contract, state contract, to handle and distribute all the over-the-counter food stamps in the state.
Now, obviously, this maybe wasn't from the top.
Yeah,
Well, then they had to forfeit their whole business because.
He went to jail. I mean, he was one of the.
How stupid is that?
Well, I had 12 defendants, and all of them were found guilty and so forth and sentenced. But anyway, here I was. I had this. I hated the thought of having to go through all this. So, but anyway, what I did, I'll make shorten the whole thing, and that investigation caught the eye of a CBS producer of 60 Minutes at the airport in Los Angeles. He was waiting at the airport, one of the producers, and he was reading the Sunday paper, waiting on a plane back to New York. And he read this story about this food stamp investigation in Louisville, Kentucky. And of course, that was my investigation. The Courier Journal they wrote a story about it and all this, Mm-hmm. And he saw that, and then when he goes back to New York, they decided to do a segment, 60-minute segment on that investigation because it was beyond belief as to how complicated and everything was, and you had to work undercover. Our headquarters came down. What we did, we set up a business there, a business. And our headquarters came down and put in a gun room, two-way mirror, and then everything was set up. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, it was
I got an idea sitting here right here, a creative idea. Maybe the government just should have opened up supermarkets just for those with food stamps, because you got people with food stamps. Now, I work very hard. Like, the NPR gets $300 million a year, which is really a thorn in my side, because I have to go out and schlep around and sell ads at 70 years of age. They get $300 million a year. Yeah. Anyway, so somebody goes into Publix right here, and they're coming out with 10 lobsters and 10 filet mignons using their food stamps. Yeah. Now, first of all, they can sell those on the street.
Yes. They can sell them.
And I have to earn that. And actually, they're spending my money to buy that. I mean, wouldn't it be better to have a supermarket that's for people with food stamps, and there wouldn't be filet mignon or lobsters there? I mean, the Bible says if a man does not work, neither shall he eat. People are miserable, and people who don't have jobs get in trouble. So the best we can do is find somebody who's a troublemaker. You give them a job. First of all, they get pride of workmanship. Right. The Bible says a man shall enjoy the fruit of his labor. They earn money. They go, hey, I'm going to go buy a steak this Friday, and I earned it. Mm-hmm. And that makes a man feels good when he knows he's earned it,
Mm-hmm. Right. So anyway, so all of a sudden I get a phone call from New York from the 60 Minutes TV show program.
Oh, 60 Minutes with Harry Reasoner.
Yes. Well, he was the one who came down to interview me. He flew in from Hungary, and he descended
That's funny. He flew in from Hungary
All
to
right.
do
Yes,
an
yes.
interview about food
Yes,
stamps.
he with me. I was the
That's
one.
hilarious.
I was the one. The
Ironic.
segment was about. I mean, I was the agent that responsible for everything. You know, of investigating that whole thing. I did have an assistance from an investigator from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and for a while, and one of the investigators from the State Attorney General's office to help me. So there were only three of us, and I was a lead agent. You know, responsible for everything. And so you can imagine there in outside the little community where I was residing outside Louisville, and this whole entourage from 60 Minutes descends upon your home, my house.
You knew they were coming.
Oh yeah.
So you were not the bad guy.
And, oh no. And here I am. I find myself sitting directly across from Harry Reasoner in my living room. As I say, I have photographs of everything, and I still have that program, the second segment, 60 Minutes program on DVD.
Yeah.
And of course, you could not. Due to the fact this was considered a news program, I did not know what he was going to ask. Okay.
Do you have a
I had
website?
no.
Do you have a website?
I do not have a website, but
I got to talk to you.
But
I think you
anyway.
need to hire our company as a marketing tool. You know why? You should have a website, and on that website, that video should be there.
oh yeah, I have the video in my home.
And they can put that. We can get a geek to put that up there. That needs to be up there, among other things. And then you have your book. People can come to the website. They can do all this information. They maybe these podcasts they can listen to, no charge.
Sure.
But if you want to sell that book, but you don't, and really, actually, you're not in this for the money because
No.
you don't need the money.
Well,
So
I'm not that rich. No.
Yeah.
But anyway,
We all need
but
a little
anyway,
extra
you can
cash.
okay. Here
you know how much is enough, right? Just a little bit more than we have.
Where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
I never was seeking to be a millionaire
No,
or
no.
anything like
But
that.
go
I
ahead.
wanted to feel comfortable within my
Yeah,
skin.
yeah.
And one of the things that made me feel most comfortable within my skin was after I earned a master's degree from George Washington University in
Yeah.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And that was something that kept bugging me and so forth. But after that, I felt more comfortable within my skin. So I did not
Why?
seek to be. It made me. I didn't really feel complete within myself. You know,
Now, so
because
what
of
I'm
my
gonna-
objectives.
What I'm going to say, though,
Okay.
is a lot of higher education is psychological.
I know it is.
In that, we have Bob Dylan, dropout, didn't go
Right.
through college. We have the Beatles. All of a sudden, we have Steve Jobs, dropout. We have
yeah.
the guy from Microsoft, dropout. In other words, I'm not sure about Bezos or not, but the point is that it's very big business, college. It's very big.
is it ever?
People
And,
pay, just like they'll buy an Anthony Robbins book or a whole bunch of CDs to teach them how to be great in real estate, let's say. Not just, I don't want to pick on Robbins, but there's other guys. Do you know like 93% of the people will never listen to those CDs or read the books? And out of the 7% that will, maybe 1/4% might become a realtor.
Right.
So it's a satisfaction of saying, I got my credit card, and all I have to do is spend $300, and guess what? I'm on my way to being a realtor, making millions of dollars.
But I think with me though, it was due to my background with where I was born and how I.
Oh,
came
Kentucky?
Up. Okay. Right. With-
So you felt like a country Kentucky boy?
I did not really have a good high school education. It was
Oh, you didn't?
22 in my graduating class. The high school was located in a cornfield.
But here you'd risen up. In those days, you didn't need a degree.
Well, you did for certain jobs, but anyway.
Well, I had a doctor, an award-winning, famous, and he's in his 80s when I met him, kidney surgeon, and he said, I said, how are things? This is about 40 years ago. He says, well, not good. He says, this is out of college. This was at Albany Medical College. And he said to me, he said, well, we're only allowing in the 4.0 average. And he said, they ace all the tests. They don't make the best doctors. Just having a photographic memory and being able to get acing tests does not make one a great doctor. Because there's the creative side to it, There's an intellectual IQ, there's an emotional IQ, maybe there's a creative IQ.
But anyway, due to my total background and everything,
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. It was horrible, really, and I just felt like that what I had to do, I had to take advantage of every opportunity that came before me.
Sure.
I didn't have a choice. I only had one
And
choice.
you probably knew people growing up who could have used before when you were a young boy. They didn't have food stamps.
Right. Oh,
And this is why, Nixon
Yeah,
and
yeah,
FDR didn't want people going hungry.
Right. Yeah. But with this food stamp thing, getting back to the 60 Minutes show and so
Yeah.
forth, and as again, I was sitting there right across from Harry Reasoner. He was a very gentle, kind
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And you know what happened 2 years after
Wow.
that he came and interviewed me? He fell down his stairs in his home in Connecticut and died. It killed him 2 years after.
No.
Yes, that's how he died. He fell down his stairs. But he was an unbelievable, just so kind and gentle and everything. But he actually had a pretty good time filming.
I can hear his voice in my
This-
head to this day.
filming
right
this
now.
program, because what he wanted to do, as I say, what happened, the office managers in these food stamp offices, they were stealing food stamps from their office. Everybody was stealing food stamps. They were using food stamps as a street currency to pay rent, to do everything with food stamps because it was a second currency. And so it was that, in fact, out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they were using food stamps. They tried, the police department out there had someone that was willing to sell a Stinger missile for food stamps.
Now, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Now
Okay.
they have a credit card.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you can't hand somebody your credit card unless you're willing to sell the whole thing.
Right, yeah. So I'm not
Well, I'm
familiar.
sure they probably do that, but
Yeah, yeah.
you can't just sell a few food stamps.
But anyway, that was what was happening. Okay.
Wow.
And so anyway, that producer in L.A., he saw the article, and then they came back and they decided to do a full 15-minute segment on food stamp fraud nationwide and so forth. And so they came to Louisville and they interviewed me and so forth.
For
And
how
they-
long? 20 minutes?
Well, the whole segment was 15 minutes. See, they did
Wow,
four.
that's a long one.
They did, yeah. And here I
People
am.
don't know in showbiz, 8 minutes is
Right.
long.
And I didn't
15
know.
is
and
outrageous.
I had no clue as to what he was going to ask me here.
Yeah.
Boy, I'll tell you. And due to the fact it was a news program, and so anyway, and he wanted, one of the things he wanted to do, he wanted to go out on the streets with my informant. Okay, which his identity was never disclosed, but. So we got in a van and everything, and went out on the streets in the evening and so forth.
Trying to sell these food stamps?
Because the ladies of the night would take food stamps for their services. Okay, they were used for everything. I'm telling you. And this is in the segment. Reason they're negotiating with this female on the streets. And
How about some steak and lobsters?
And he said, "Well, how many food stamps do you accept?" And she says, "Well, $100 worth of food stamps." She would do her business,
Wow.
And then, of course, he made some excuse to go on, and and we all went on down. But anyway, he got a not a kick, but that was very interesting to him to just actually find out down on the street exactly what was going on. Okay, so that was so that's how much of a problem it became back during that period of time nationwide. So and then what I was going to go into, I can go in any direction here. After that, we and I was going back to I wanted to go back to when I was. After I graduated from high school, okay, I got this little job with the FBI, a clerical job in D.C. At 18, and then in 1920 I became a tour leader. I took tourists and people on tours of FBI headquarters. Now I was only 2 years out of high school.
That sounds like a fun job.
Well, yeah, I mean it was a very sought after position because to me, I mean, good grief. So. anyway, I would, for 2 years solid, I would take tourists on a tour of FBI headquarters.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 2 to 4 times a day. We went through. I had to learn the history about the laboratory, everything about J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. Okay, and during that period of time, when I was 21 years of age, I coached the FBI headquarters female basketball team. Okay, they had a like a football team, intramural football team
Yeah.
in a league, and I coached the girls basketball team. Okay, and lo and behold, we were in a league with other agencies like the CIA, Department of State, and this and that and so forth. So we won our league, and so we received these trophies and everything. And the trophy, a large one, was put in J. Edgar Hoover's outer office. Blah blah blah. And in the meantime, the men's football team, they won their league. Okay, so as a result of winning their league, they got to go in and meet Hoover personally. They lined them up and they went in and each one and blah blah blah. And well, guess what? Due to the fact our female team won our league, we did not get to do that. And I found out later why. I kept wondering, well, why did we not get to go in and meet the director? It was because he was not into females being, it was due to the fact it was a girls' basketball team. Okay, that's the reason we did not get to go in and meet the director. So he didn't start having female FBI agents until in the 70s, and so he was not into females.
It's funny when you look back and you go,
Yeah.
they wouldn't allow someone to get a job because of the color of their skin.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a friend of mine. He just passed away, and his daughter was talking to the mother, and she said, "Why didn't you play with this person?" I said, "But we weren't allowed to because of the color of the skin." And the little girl goes, "Because of the color of the skin? Well, how stupid is that? Just out of the mouths of a babe."
Yeah.
And then you got people. So females weren't allowed.
No. He had preference men over women, and become agents and everything.
Now, now was he homosexual?
Only, the only
Are we talking about Hoover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he didn't like females.
Well, it was obvious that he was not pro-female.
Now we
versus
don't know
pro-male.
that. Do we know if he was homosexual? Maybe he was just. Maybe there are people that are what do you call asexual.
Right, right. They are asexual. People would, it was stated that the FBI was his girlfriend or whatever. I mean, but now
I can understand that.
Well, but his Clyde Tolson now, his associate director, the number two man in the FBI, they were friends until he died. They lived together and everything.
Oh,
and
they
I would
did.
I would be called upon to go up into his office and take these visitors in his office on a tour of FBI headquarters. See, I was up there many times. I'd go in there, and he was standing there with his friends and so forth.
All right.
But in order to be able to get a special tour like that, everyone who came to Washington from Congressman Rooney's office in New York City, he was chairman of the House Appropriations Committee.
All right.
So when a referral came from Congressman Rooney's office, they were always directed to Associate Director Tolson's office, and they would go to his office and wait. They wouldn't have to wait in line with all the other tourists and so forth on those July days or whatever. So that was due to the fact that he was chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and Hoover was very political. He was very savvy politically.
Talking about political,
Okay.
I find this subversive. There was a time probably these people would have been shot. But when we found out that those FBI agents had those text messages saying we can't let Trump be president, that is subversion.
Sure. That was
Why were they not arrested? Back 100 years ago, they would have been shot at the firing squad for, what do you call it?
Yeah.
When you're
Yeah.
what do you call those people?
anarchist or a communist or whatever.
What was the guy in the Revolutionary War called?
Benedict Arnold?
Yeah,
he
what
was,
was
he was a traitor.
A traitor. So you're considered a traitor. So these
Right.
FBI agents today who actually text, "We cannot let Trump be president."
That's right.
Why are they not held up on charges?
Well, that's because who was president? Who was president at the time? That's the reason.
Obama.
Well, whomever, yeah. That's the reason, and of course, I'm friends with numerous FBI agents. I've known them, worked with them totally, and as I say, when I was a liaison representative to the FBI headquarters, I was over there every day. I had my own pass. I could go unescorted anywhere.
Well, you were right up. You were right up there.
Oh, yeah.
Were you a nice guy to be? Were you a good, nice boss, or were you a tough boss?
No, I was. Whenever I was in that position, I was. I try to be fair. I mean, you're fair and nice.
Because now you're an older man in his 80s. Now you come in here. I don't work for you, but you've always been nice to me. You're quick to laugh, which is a good sign.
Yeah, I consider a person with no sense of humor. How in the world can?
Well, you and I both agree that George Bush, who I encountered a few times, and you did,
Right. Oh,
he had a great sense of humor, and I think a good sense of humor is a sign of a greater intellect.
You have to have one. But
look at Mark Twain. He said, "Better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open it and remove all doubt."
Yeah. So anyway, going back real fast here with Hoover and Tolson and so forth.
Yeah.
And I was in and out of his office numerous times.
Yeah.
They were always together. They lived together. And they had standing a reservation at the Mayflower Hotel for lunch every day.
Every day.
They went to the races together, blah, 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 blah. They were just as one, So it's really up to the individual to look at all those things and make up their own mind as to whether or not they were
Let's say they were gay. Isn't it funny that the guy who crossed the T's and dotted the I's and had to hold people accountable for the severity of the law himself might have been a lawbreaker against God and the naturalness of a man with a woman?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's kind of ironic, But I don't know. I have to tell you, though, if I were, I don't want to come down on gay people.
No.
I don't, me personally, I don't think it's natural, but I can tell you when I was a boy and I was 14 years of age living in a rooming house, if a homosexual couple, male or a couple of lesbians, that were to take me in and love me, do you think I would have liked that? You're darn right.
You better believe it.
So I'm in the corner of love ultimately.
Yeah.
I don't know how Jesus is going to handle all the other stuff, and it's really not my business. So,
But historically speaking, though, we who our first gay president was?
Who?
James Buchanan.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How do we find that out?
Well, history. Just read, go on the YouTube.
Now I'm going to ask
wherever.
you something here.
Because,
okay. They talked about it. Yeah. Now I had the former a white guy who was the cameraman for Martin Luther King, photographer.
Right.
And ironically, Jesse Jackson or some of these other guys, when they started to become very famous, Martin Luther King, he says, "Let's get rid of Whitey." And Martin Luther King says, "What do you think we're doing here? Why are we doing all this?"
Yeah.
You don't judge a person by their skin color. Anyway, so he said, and it's this man, he said, then one time we were on a plane, I was going through a hard time. He said, Dr. Martin Luther King took off his tie and talked to me for a couple hours. He became my pastor. Well, he said years later, one of these major publishing companies in New York City said, "We're going to give you a big chunk of money." And he said, "I could use it. I'm retired living in South Florida." You have 10 chapters in your book. You can write about anything you want, but one chapter you have to say that there was suspicion that he was having affairs behind his wife. And he said, "No, I'm not going to do that because we were the media. We all talk. If he'd been having an affair," he said, "we would have all been talking about it and we would have known it." But see, to cast aspersions upon someone's character who can't defend himself after he's dead and gone is reprehensible in my book.
But getting back to Buchanan, I want to make it clear that back during that period of time, and everybody knew that.
Yeah.
Okay. They didn't care. They didn't.
Really?
No.
Oh, you would think back then they would
No,
have.
you would think no.
Fire and
no,
brimstone
no,
and all
no,
that stuff,
No, it was, really, he lived in there for a while in the Willard Hotel with former Senator Rufus King. All that. But what I'm saying is, socially speaking, when he would come to a social function, everybody would be there, and they would, the ladies would be talking this and that. They would kid, but they did not hold it against him. They did not think anything negative about it whatsoever. And the point being is, and that's the way, that was the attitude back in 1850.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to, now, I mean, some of our best friends have been gay. I mean, we've had neighbors, this and that, as growing up. So we never really thought anything about it one way or the other.
I don't like being forced to watch men and women kissing each other in
no,
movies.
no. That's
I mean, just,
that's an individual
but
preference.
actually,
yeah.
we don't really see.
Yeah.
I don't want to see heterosexual couples. That's
No, it's
private.
heterosexual couples either.
No.
Well, just like down here in Vero Beach recently, well, you're aware of the fact that this couple that down on US 1 in front of near the chicken place down there.
What happened?
They were having sex right on the sidewalk. Did you?
A man and a woman?
Yes, it was in the newspaper. It was on. Yeah.
Did they get arrested?
Yeah. I mean, the police came. I mean, I'm not kidding you.
Well, hold on. When I was up in
But yeah,
whatever it is, up in Vermont last summer, we're taking a walk into a park. I didn't know there it's legal. If you leave the house naked, you can walk around naked.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes this young couple, he and she both completely, absolutely naked, holding hands, walking out of the park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now they knew they had to be a spectacle.
So the way I look at it, it's what's good for the goose, good for the gander. It doesn't matter if you're straight, gay, or whatever, as long as you act inappropriately. It's up to you. But I would never. I've known so many throughout my life. You come in contact with them as friends, neighbors, this, that. No, and so I am definitely not going out around anti-gay or anything like that. I'm just, it's up to the individual regardless. And the question that needs to be asked, well, who made this person the way they are? Who? It's our Creator.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's the way I look at it.
It's not my business, I know.
Yeah. So anyway, that. But
Now, I
anyway,
want to talk about something else.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
What I want to talk about here is counterfeit.
Yeah. Okay.
Counterfeit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're talking about counterfeit
Money.
food stamps.
Food
Now,
stamps
that's
and
been
currency.
cleaned up a lot today because they get a credit card.
Right.
But the only thing about that is you don't know who has it. So if it's Christmas time and you're waiting for somebody to come along to figure out, well, who's poor here? Who could use a financial blessing? Well, they put out a credit card and they pay for the groceries. You don't know if that's a legitimate credit card or if it's a food stamp. So it's hard to discern who needs the dough, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is. I say that was. I've had to testify in court, federal court, numerous times because as a Secret Service agent, you were considered to be an expert on counterfeit money.
I want to ask you this.
Yeah, I've been to the
And I
Crane
bet
paper mill up in.
I want to hear all about that, but I bet you this. I bet you all don't publicize it, but I bet you there's more counterfeit than we can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, you go down to your basement and all of a sudden you wake up the next day and you got $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now
I don't know how they clean that money or how they get rid of it,
Well,
but
the counterfeiter can still make a very good counterfeit bill with the machines they use and everything. They can still come up with a counterfeit bill that can be passed on the public without being detected.
so I probably handled
Oh yeah.
counterfeit and didn't know it.
Yeah. Right. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
That's more than likely you have. Boy,
Now,
I remember
are you good at discerning this? That's what, Taylor, do I have any counterfeit in my hand right now?
Well, I can just take a look at it and I can see. Okay, I see some things right here. They have little threads, little red and blue threads that it's put in the paper, and while the paper is in liquid state, being made up at the Crane Paper Company in Dalton, Massachusetts. That's where it's all the paper is made for the U.S. currency.
Now these are hundreds
Yeah.
and fifties.
Yeah.
Today's
You can
counterfeiter usually doesn't do hundreds and fifties. They do
20s,
20s
something-
or 10s
yeah,
because
something
they're going to be
that's-
less apt to be
right.
scrutinized. Like right now, you can't go to McDonald's and give them a $50 bill or $100 bill.
Right.
They will not accept it.
I'll tell you an interesting thing about there being in Louisville there, speaking of counterfeit versus protecting the president. I remember President Carter came to Kentucky for a visit in western Kentucky, Henderson, Kentucky, okay?
yeah.
And I was assigned to be with him, okay? And also now over in eastern Kentucky, we had this counterfeit investigation going on in the hills and, you know, and so forth over there. And at the same time, and so we had to call in some agents from out of town to assist in the counterfeiting investigation over there. And so while I was over in with the President Carter doing the protective thing, well, our other agents were in eastern Kentucky carrying on the counterfeiting investigation. They got into a gun battle over there. I'm not kidding. I mean, no one was killed or hit, luckily. But here you had a shootout in the hills of eastern Kentucky at the same time that President Carter was visiting western Kentucky in Henderson. I mean, so you had to be able to do both. As a Secret Service agent, you're cross-trained to perform all investigations. Every one, you're cross-trained to do that. So you can be zipped from here to there and boom, 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 all the way, you know, across the world, really. And so that's one of the differences between our agency and, say, the FBI and some of the others, okay? So you have to be ready. I mean, unbelievable. I've been there in my office conducting a criminal investigation, and then all of a sudden a message would come from our headquarters that 2 days later I would have to catch a plane and because I would be I'd have to go assist in the visit of the vice president when he traveled to all the way across to the Philippines, New Zealand,
That's a
and
long
so forth.
flight.
Okay, yeah. So 2 days later.
Back then, did they have jets or was it still
Oh yeah,
prop?
this was 1978. I had to do that. I was there, and all of a sudden, you know, just doing my thing, and then you get this message. Okay, you be prepared to go assist in this visit. So we would fly in advance of his visits. Okay, and so I got on that plane in Louisville, and I ended up in New Zealand because I went to Indonesia, Philippines, and New Zealand, Wellington, New Zealand. And so
Now,
forth.
what president was this? Do you
That
remember?
was Vice President Mondale.
Okay.
In 1978.
Oh, he was vice president with who?
He was Carter. He was
Okay,
Carter.
let me ask you this. So, were they known? You could be on a whole flight all the way to the Philippines,
Right, I had to be on
13 hours or whatever.
Oh,
So
good
let me ask you
Lord.
something.
was terrible.
Did you always get to meet the vice president or not? I mean,
Well,
he can't
yeah,
really
yeah.
introduce himself to everybody.
No. They know. Excuse me. They know who you are. It's just like being. You don't think anything about it. You're right around them doing your job. And no, we don't shoot the bull with them or whatever. They know who we are, and we know who, you know, this and that. No, you don't ever. Yeah, you're right. You're right with them like you would be a coworker, whatever. So you don't think anything about it.
You know what I don't like though? We spend
really?
$800 million a year for the president.
Mm-hmm.
Now he comes up here. First of all, they stop. You can't take your plane out. You can't take any flights in or out while he's here. Then you can't drive up the street protected by the police. They go. He sits on the toilet just like me. He's just a human.
I know.
Well, I mean, it's ludicrous almost.
Yeah.
We've gone overboard, haven't we? Maybe.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm going to something. Now, Obama was our first black president, right?
Right.
I'm surprised somebody didn't take a shot at him.
Well,
And I'm surprised they haven't taken a shot at Trump. I mean,
tell you,
is that a
it's not
testimony
an
of how
easy-
good our
it- it is not. Oh yeah, it is not an easy job really to protect someone like Trump and President Obama. But there was, you know, you had to just. It's a difficult job. I mean, you can't imagine the details that have to be worked out prior to a visit and during a visit, beyond belief, and everything has to be covered. So but anyway, I remember going into Jakarta, Indonesia there, while I was there, I woke up in the morning and they always gave us a newspaper. We dealt with the State Department, and I picked up the newspaper, and lo and behold, this city councilman had been swallowed by a boa constrictor snake.
No.
So he didn't show up after he had the meeting. He didn't show up at home, so they started looking for him the next morning. They found this huge, snake, and they saw the bulge in him, so they cut it open and popped out. He pops. So, but anyway, you just as I say, there's so many things that directions we could go in here, and with the one president that really understood what it was all about was President Truman. He did not. I mean, he was like the most average, common human being that you could ever be. He did not think he was important. He had humility, like unbelievable. And for example, at one time, the agent in charge of his detail out there in Independence as a former president, he had them over for dinner at his house. And so after dinner, Ms. Truman just bounces up and says, "Okay, let's all go to the kitchen, help do these dishes." And then he was being honored at the annual Al Smith banquet in New York City one year. And now I was not there, but the agent in charge of the agents with him, they were telling me, and the master of ceremony was up there just telling him what a great person he was, just laying all this stuff on him. And he just turned to someone beside him. He said, "I cannot understand why they are saying all those great things about me." He says he couldn't understand it. And he was able to, when he was president, they kept Air Force One at Washington National Airport. That's where it was parked. Yeah. And so after Eisenhower took over, he got on his plane to be flown to Kansas City, and then end up in
Does an ex-president get to fly first class, or did they just have to drive coach like everybody else?
Everybody, just like everybody else.
Really?
They make their own arrangements as far as flying and so forth. But Truman, on the way, as I told you maybe before, between D.C. and Kansas City, he was able to transform himself from being president of the United States to an average citizen, and he never looked back. So he was that type of person. And most people would not associate.
I wonder
that with
how it is that some men are born with such humility. Now, maybe it is their parents' teaching, maybe not. Maybe it is their fear of God, accountability, maybe not. It seems like there are certain people, like, for instance, Dr. Billy Graham, who I met and interviewed. Right. He was the humblest, kindest man. He was just wonderful. And his whole intent was not, he didn't care, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
He was just there and very nice. I could go into details, but so it amazes me, it's some men who have integrity and going through life. The Bible says ill-gotten gain grows wings and takes flight. So, and they also report that in the business world, if you have integrity, you might have to wait a little bit longer for your ship to come in. But when your ship comes in, it's going to be floating and, it's going to be solid. Whereas if you build your success on ill-gotten gain, as I said, the Bible says it grows wings and takes flight. It just somehow doesn't all work out too well.
And it's a combination of your background and the type of person you are born as. I mean, when we're all different and so forth. And the environment has an impact, and just the way you come into this world. I mean, your genes and so forth. Really.
Did you ever have anybody that offered you money so they could meet a president, or to get pushy with them?
I never did. No, not really. No. But what happened when I was, as I say, in D.C. in our headquarters, I had the privilege of being able to set up a special tour of the White House, where you could come there and then I could go. What I would do for people, this happened all the time. I mean, I was always doing favors for people. I mean, and still do. I mean, it's just unbelievable sometimes. But what I was able to do, I would receive phone calls from some old boy out in Arizona who had a relative, this and that. They were going to be in D.C., and would I be able to set up, get them in on a special tour of the White House? Okay, so what I would have to do, I would have to get up early, leave my residence early, and be there at the East Gate at 7 a.m. because the tour started at 8, those special tours, okay, of the White House. And I would have to be there at 7, and they would meet me there at the East Gate, and all I had to do was, of course, they knew who I was, the Uniform Division, the Secret Service, White House police officers, okay. And so I would sign them in on the log, their names and everything, and then they were able to
I want to
have a
ask you this.
special tour of the White House.
I took a tour of the White House.
Man, I had to do that
I
all
took
the
a tour of the White House recently, and they said when Obama was in, some days he would just go, I don't want anybody in here, so cancel. Now we had to make this arrangement months in advance.
Right.
So you make all this arrangements, you fly into Washington, and then Obama says, I don't want anybody. But I have to admit, can you imagine every day knowing that there are people wandering around the other side of your house, snooping around? I mean, they can't go into the quarters where they live.
No, that's upstairs. But anyway, no, they have their limitations as to where they can go. The tourists.
Now, I would like to take a real tour of the White House, not where the people go. Right. I want to see the Oval Office. Yeah. I want to see where they live, what the sleeping quarters are like.
So anyway, just being in that position, man, you can't imagine that the requests I would have during a year to, could you do this for me? Blah, 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 And I'd have to get up early and drive in the 18 miles from my residence to the White House and park.
And the traffic I'm watching. Well, listen,
okay.
We're out of time for today, but I do want to let people know this. Don Bell has been in here. This is a series we're doing with Don Bell, former Secret Service agent. And you don't have a website, though, at this point?
No, I do.
What's the title of your book?
Struggle to Zero.
Struggle, T-O-0. Struggle to Zero. And it's available at the Vero Beach Book Center. It's available on Amazon.
Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble.
You got it all out there.
Everywhere.
Okay, and, Struggle to Zero. Yeah.
And but anyway, and maybe the next time we can go anywhere in the world.
Yeah. By the way, you can see
or anything to do with countries, foreign.
I want to talk about that. By the way, you can go to www.verosvoice.com for information. See his beautiful Did you see your beautiful ad?
No, not yet.
Oh, you got to see your ad.
But anyway, I would like to cover one time the history of presidential assassanations and political assassinations.
All right, let's do that. We'll do that maybe in a couple of weeks.
From the very beginning and bring us right up to date.
Okay.
And then also, start with presidents, okay, from George Washington up to the present time with their unusual things that the general public would never know about one of your presidents.
I would love that.
These unique things about that individual as a person, and a lot of them were very interesting in the things their hang-ups, this, that, or whatever.
All right, we'll talk about that next time you come in.
We can take them
Now, you do know that all these interviews we're doing are going on Rhett Palmer Podcast.
Right.
So anybody in the world can log on to that, to those. It's on Spotify, it's on iHeart, it's on all of them. And you can download it, and it's an audio. Essentially, it's an audio library on demand.
Right.
On demand means it's not live. When you want to listen to it, you can listen to it.
So I better be careful with what I say.
Yeah, because it'll be there long after
it'll be there for infamy.
We don't know, but at this point, after you're dead and gone, it'll be there for a long time. So
no, there's really there's so many things that we could cover.
Assassinations next time.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in,
okay.
Don Bell.
Thank
Good to
you
see
very
you.
much.
And the title of the book again is
Struggle to Zero, because I was so far below zero when I was born, I had to struggle to even get to zero.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.